Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hi. I'm glad to see you all here. As usual, let's commence with the pricing questions. I'll start with one of the outside ones, and then we'll get to yours. I do strategy work, and they always ask for guarantees for the results, I guess, which I cannot give. So, as it's not me doing the implementation, do I have to discount because I always discount at that point? Okay, so no, you don't. I have been in that situation, and they ask you for strategy, you're not doing implementation, so you're not in control of implementation. This is a great opportunity to price on value. So what do they want to achieve from your rethinking of their situation? What can't they do on their own? And if they don't manage to strike a deal with you, what do they stand to lose? So the value of your engagement is not really connected to the amount of work you do. It's the amount of trouble that they're in. And if you can deal with that in 10 minutes, that's okay. If you can deal with that in six months, that's also okay. They just want you to get them out of trouble. If they could think their way out of trouble, they would not hire a consultant to do strategy work, right? And of course, you can't guarantee results because you have nothing to do with them. But if you price on value, you can ask for something like 10 to 15% of the value as your fee. And then if they say, well, yeah, but we don't know that we're going to get the result, you say, yes, of course you don't. Nobody has a crystal ball, right? But do you think that me working on this has a better chance of working than 15%? Because if you don't, there's not enough trust between us for me to do this job. But I don't think you would be talking to me. Your expectation was that low. So if it's higher than 15%, and my price is for 15%, everything between my fee and the actual chance that this is going to work is your profit, which is fine, right? So you stand to gain a lot of money by paying me only 10 to 15% of what I'm asking, because the percentage of this working is not 100%. Of course, it's not. It never is, but it's probably much higher than what I'm asking. So your risk is not that high. You can also give them several options, which is always good. So your basic option is you doing what they want you to do. But your second option may be for you to find the implementation team, hire them at a premium, and lead them for implementation. So you will do everything. You'll do staffing, you'll do pay, you'll do everything. But of course, they're going to pay for all of that and pay you for your time and for your risk. So that's going to be really expensive. But then you can say, yes, I can have something to do with implementation. Then you can guarantee something or not guarantee something. Then you have a direct input. Or there's the middle ground, of course, of them finding the team, because maybe they want their team to do the implementation, which is, I think, the most usual. But then you can offer, again, for a surcharge, to check their work, right? So you do the strategy, and then you act like an architect surveying the building site. So you're not there to pound the nails. You're not there to pour concrete. You're just there so everybody does exactly what they need to do, so your strategy would work. So in that way, you can exert control, at least some control, some influence over the result, but you, of course, get paid for that risk. In all three cases, they get what they want at varying cost and also at varying degrees of risk. And that's how it should be. I hope that settles the question. Marian, hi. Have you got a question for me today?
Yes, my question is an example, actually.
A scenario, right?
Yes, thank you. A scenario was the word I was looking for.
Fair enough.
So the scenario goes like this. Let's say that I am providing legal services to a European company.
Okay.
And this company gets sold to an outside of Europe investor.
Okay.
Of which investor I have no prior knowledge. What would be my first step or steps to ensure that I continue my collaboration with the said company, which now has new owners whom I am not familiar with.
Okay. So what's the first thing that you do?
Yes, what's the first thing that I do to try to maintain the
relationship,
the cooperation?
Okay. So I would say this is all about context, because legal services, we all know they're important, but their path to the bottom line, their contribution to the bottom line, is not always clear. It's not actually the worst thing to explain, because wherever the firm who bought your client, hypothetically, is from, they also have legal services, so they know what it is. It's not like you're, I don't know, Internet of Things division and they don't know what it is, right? But still, they could be tempted at bringing in their own legal services, right?
Yes.
So what you need to do here is you need to state the case for a local legal representation as a necessity for continued value creation in the firm. So what I would do, I would build context. I would build a sheet, even, I don't know, maybe infographic if you know a good designer, and show in the last period. So if you have worked for them for, I don't know, half a year, 2 years, 3 years, what value has your contribution brought to the firm? So you put a stop to a potential dispute. You found a very lucrative land somewhere, right? You brought it to them, right? You made the overall contract better. So when employees who are pregnant go to their maternity leave, the firm has more options what to do with them when they get back. So they are more happy, but also the firm is more happy, right? So all the tangible benefits that made it easier for other people contributing more directly to the bottom line, to enabling them to do their jobs, right? I mean, as far as I know, that's the role of the legal department, even if it's an outside one, right? You're the tank leveling the ground so the troops can carry on, right? And you shield them from all of the really heavy stuff that they couldn't handle on their own. So in there, I would actually emphasize the role that a local legal firm has in dealing with the local problems. So an outside firm would be completely lost within them. So if you can emphasize those cases, because those are relevant, I would. So you illustrate your value in a way that makes it clear that one of the main advantages of you staying there is you being local, not just to the country, but also to the client, to the company, right? So an outside legal force is going to have a hard time dealing with those because they don't know the grounds yet, right? And would not know them for a very long time. So I would probably choose cases which emphasize these differential points as their main focus. So when somebody looks at that, I would suggest one piece of paper, maybe with an additional table if somebody wants to look at it, but I would make it as an infographic if you can, something that can be easily digested to the level of the gist of it in like 20 seconds, and then you have something to look at for 5 more minutes if you want to, right? I would literally illustrate the value that you brought to the firm. And not only will this show value, this will also show initiative. So, you found out that the client is getting sold. You didn't hunker down and try to blend into the wall so that nobody would notice that they're paying you a retainer and try to do as little as possible. No, you got in front of it and you used the tools to make them to make their decision easy. Everybody appreciates that. Nobody has enough time to do everything that they wanted to do that day. So, oh God, yeah, we still have to think about the legal department. Oh, okay, this makes things easier. That would be my first move. I would try to illustrate things literally So illustrate the context and the value that you brought in the past. So it would be very hard for somebody to just dismiss you, because somebody would say, yeah, but what about those things? So these new guys that you want to bring in, can they do this? And you basically choose as many examples as you can where the clear answer is no. An outside firm would not be able to do that, right?
Mhm.
Because you have the initiative, you can bend the picture in a way that will protect the client from any rash decisions. If you waited until somebody told you to do something like that, they could dictate the categories, and maybe you wouldn't be able to show your value in such a way. If you take the initiative, then before they even remember that there's a legal department they have to worry about, you already made their decision easy. I think that would be my first move.
Okay, good. Thank you.
How do I know if I can consider myself to be an expert? Common question. I talk about expert value, I talk about expert services. So somebody was bound to ask me about a definition of one, right? It's not an exact science, but labels like expert rarely are very exact. But I think that there's, at least in my opinion, a good litmus test, an easy test that you can do, which is, can you think of any person in this world that can just switch jobs with you, take your place, and that clients would not really notice or care after a few weeks? If you can imagine that, then you may be a specialist, maybe a very good specialist, but the work that you do is basically interchangeable, and I would not call you an expert. So specialist, yes. Good specialist, yes. Expert, no. Because in my opinion, expert work is not interchangeable work. An hour of consulting with me is not an hour of consulting with somebody else. It's a completely different thing. An hour is an hour, and consulting is consulting, but it makes no sense to say it like that, right? An hour of design doesn't mean anything. An hour of coding doesn't mean anything, not by itself, right? Not without heavy context. And, an hour of digging ditches, sure, it's comparable. They're better and worse ditch diggers, car washes, felling trees, whatever. It doesn't have to be a service. It can be a service, right? A cashier, maybe somebody's much better cashier, but a much better cashier is not the same as a much better lawyer, not by a long shot, right? So if your work is not interchangeable with basically anybody else's work, then I would call you an expert. It's probably more complicated than that, but for the sake of this conversation, for the sake of this answer, I think that's good enough. When I ask people this, then most people that I talk to usually say, hell no. Several of them said, I would pay a lot of money if that was possible. So I'm somebody who can just step into my shoes and do what I do. That's awesome. That's like a pipe dream. So yeah, if you don't feel interchangeable, then congratulations, you're an expert. I feel completely out of place when I try to ask for more money. I know I'm worth that, but it's the same amount of work for the different price, so I'm conflicted. Yeah, look, it's like I said at the beginning, people who buy your work don't really want your work. They want the result. It's not really worth more to them if you work more on it. Not really. Sometimes they think they do want to know how long it will take. How many hours did you work on this? But you can try it out. You can say, wait a minute. If I worked really hard on camera, I don't care, on camera. If I worked 60 hours, but I delivered no tangible result to you, would you still pay me? Well, if I had to. So if you had a choice, no. So you don't care about me working. You care about me solving the problem, right? And invariably, in my opinion, in my experience, here you're going to say, well, yes. Yes, they care about the problem being taken care of, not really how many hours you put into it. It being the same amount of work is completely beside the point. The question is the value better? And if it is, you're completely justified in asking for more money, because that's what you're selling, a solution. Solution is such an overused word, but they want to not have the problem, pretty please, with cherry on top. And, I can solve it in 6 hours, in 12 hours, in 18 hours. Okay, please solve it in 6. I want to not have it. I don't value your work more because you work more hours. I don't care. And why should I? Right? As a buyer. Don't be conflicted. Don't feel out of place. If your value is worth it, then it's worth it. It doesn't matter if it's the same work or not the same work. As you get better, the same thing will take less and less hours, but you will be better and better. This same work doesn't come into it. Only the value is relevant here. Clients prefer to see my formula for calculating the price, but I feel that's proprietary. It's none of their business. Okay, not really a question, but let's say it's a question. I agree. Your formula of calculating the price is nobody's business. It's similar with the hours, right? They can ask about your costs, and you can test it here as well. You can say, okay, you want to know about my costs. Okay, if I share my costs with you, and it's objectively true that my costs go double since we start working, would you pay me more? Would you pay me double? And they would probably say no. Okay, then you don't want to know about my costs, so I won't share them with you. I won't burden you with my costs, right? If somebody is not willing to share the risk, they have no reason for knowing what they actually are. It's actually good to say no to such a client's request, especially because it's not really in their interest to know. Because if they know, then they may, and this is very usual, they may get ideas. Oh, I have a good idea. How about we just skip that part and I don't have to pay for it? So their incentive to meddle is very high, especially if your price was low anyway, if they felt like hiring you were a bargain, because we all know about bargains, right? If it looks too good to be true, it probably is. So if they feel that you were a bargain, they will try to, keep an eye on you, just in case that you were too good to be true. And then you say something and that, well, we have to do this by 6 hours. Can you do it in 3? No. Why? Do you really want to enter that conversation? Because at that point, the only justified thing to say to a client, which is unfortunate, is go get knowledge that I have, then I can explain. Without that, it's the waste of my time to try to explain why this has to be 6 hours. So this is absolutely not a situation in which you want to be in, right? And I think if you remember, if what you do is actually expert work, then there can't really be a formula which calculates everything in precision, because even your work is inconsistent. Some days it's going to be better, some days it's going to be worse. It's a fact of life. We're humans, we're not machines. A commodity can be, you can take a product and see, okay, so this part costs this much, this part costs this much. Well, when you put it all together, it doesn't work like that in expert services. What you do is not a commodity. So you can have a formula to know that you're not losing money. You know how much money you need to get that year. You know approximately how much time this will take. And you have to know that you're not losing money. That's fine. That you can use a formula for that. But to get to a price of an expert service, whatever formula you use is going to make some heavy assumptions and approximations. And to understand it, the client would have to know what you do so well that they probably wouldn't need you in the first place. So because you're an expert, because what you do is not a commodity, you may have a formula, but that's a heavily abbreviated, heavily approximated one, which the client won't understand. And it will just confuse him and worry him. And I would definitely decline that. And this is one of the reasons why I usually advocate for round prices. So not 2,973, but 3,000. 3,000, 3,500, 4,000. That's it. Because once you have a price that looks calculated, it's basically an invitation for clients to poke. Right? How did you come to that? And then, because if you have a round price, it's because that's how much we charge for it. It's not really an answer, but the question is not really relevant, right? I once asked a brilliant mathematician, who's one of my friends from high school, what his thesis was. He had a doctoral thesis, and he said, we only have 2 hours for this beer, so let's just not. It has to do with quantum computers. That's everything that you really can and need to understand right now. Let's talk about something else. I could explain, but it would take too long and you would not get an answer that's really satisfying to anybody. And I said, fair enough, and went on drinking. But I saw that he answered that question many times. I wanted to know, but not really to the point of losing the whole afternoon finding out. It's complex mathematics. Let's go on, right? Just like that, the client may be mildly interested, or they may be maliciously interested and trying to poke in. In both cases, it's better to say no. And if somebody really insists because they want to poke around, then they're probably not a good client and you're better off not working for them anyway. Because being an expert, being under the influence of a client like that, what they call backseat driving, that's a really stressful situation and I wouldn't wish it on an enemy. I have personal experience in that and that's just not good. Thank you all for your questions that you sent in. Thank you all for your chat questions, and thank you, Marian, for your direct question. It's always good to have somebody on camera, and I'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Bye.
Everything changes.